Good Shabbos. This week's portion is Parshas Re'eh. And in this week's portion, it mentions that all sacrifices have to be brought in the Makom Asher Yivchar Hashem, the place which God chooses. And originally that place might have been a Mishkan, a tabernacle, which was traveling and temporary. But after the building of the temple by Solomon, it's only in Jerusalem, only in Yerushalayim, the capital of Israel. And that capital was chosen by David, because by David HaMelech, by David the king, because that city really is in the center of Israel, and his purpose, as I understand it, was to unite the Jewish people. We have all kinds of different tribes, and now we're saying, no, we're all one people. That didn't last that long. The kingdom split up, but that's the goal. And I think we have to realize that when we just now memorialized a few weeks ago the destruction of the first and the second temple, that one of the things we have to strive for is unity. And that unity will help bring us to our final and total redemption. The other thing that's important that I like to focus on is the idea of spreading knowledge. That in the time of Mashiach, as it says in the prophets, that Mala Haaretz Deya, the world will be full with knowledge, kamayim machasim al yam, just like the water covers the sea. Knowledge and everybody understanding the same notions, the same ideas, and using the same facts could be drawn together. And I always like to think, my optimistic side is that that's what we're reaching today. Today there's much more unity in the Jewish people, and there's unity even amongst the nations of the world, believe it or not, that we have certain ideas that guide us, whether that's facts, whether it's science, whether it's morals and ethics. In the Western world, you can call it Judeo-Christian ethics. They bring us together. But at the end of the day, even now, I have to say that I have a little bit of despair, because when I go out and I see what's happening with today's youth, is that they're not taking the facts. Forget the ideas, forget the concepts which develop because of those facts. They're not even accepting the facts. The age of the internet was supposed to bring knowledge throughout the world and equality of knowledge, and everyone could have an ability to obtain that knowledge. And now when you go out on the street, you see just the opposite. So the reason I'm somewhat despairing is we know that all we see in the news and we see on the campuses are lies that are spread. And I suppose it's just a personal experience that I just had this week. I was walking down the street in Halifax, and there was Palestinian protesters, and I made the mistake of trying to talk to them and trying to tell them the facts on the ground. And one of the things that happened to come up in our conversation, as I was surrounded by many young people, and I'm assuming most of those were in university or trained in a university, was I mentioned somehow about the temple being in Jerusalem. And they said, no, there was no such thing. And I'm thinking, these are people who take seriously that which is happening in Israel and Gaza today. They're talking about the rights of Palestinians, and of course they have to take into account the rights of the Jews to the land of Israel. And they're screaming at me, literally screaming at me, you don't know history. And when I mentioned the temple, they say there was no such temple. And anybody who's interested in the history of Israel could open up a Chumash, could open up the portion where here it doesn't say Jerusalem, but later on in the prophets. All you have to do is use a little Google search, and you'll find that the temple was built by Solomon, and that's maybe just, we don't have a lot of evidence, but we do know that King Herod built the second temple, rebuilt the second temple, and you could see the Wailing Wall. And if you go to Jerusalem, you could see the stones from the second temple thrown down by the Romans. You can go see the Arch of Titus, which shows the Romans taking the kalim, the vessels, and the menorah specifically, from the temple back to Rome. It's obvious that there was a Jewish people who lived in Jerusalem, that it was the capital of Jerusalem, that the temple was the center of their religion. And we have young people today who don't know the facts. Maybe they know it and they're lying, or maybe they just don't really care about the facts at all. And this whole hope of having daya, knowledge, kamayim machasim alayam, like water covering the sea, seems to be almost a fantasy. So the solution is not very simple. But I think that we have to take these two ideas, and that's what we have to run with. That's what we have to take responsibility. Number one, that we have to be unified. The temple brought us together. We have to stay together even without a temple. And we have to be the ones who are sharing the knowledge, the facts. And we have to be stubborn. The Torah says it in almost a negative way, that the Jewish people are am kshei oref. They're a stiff-necked people. You should not be stubborn in your lies. You should not be stubborn in your ignorance, but you should be stubborn in searching for truth and then being able to promote truth and sticking to it and being unified and making sure that we're all together in declaring these truths. The only thing I could do, or we could do, is hope that one day the truth will push its way through the lies, the misinformation, the disinformation, the propaganda that's out there on the street, and that young people, and I'm not talking about Palestinians who have relatives or have family that's suffering, and you could even understand why they might be one to accepting what they call a different narrative, but your average student in Canada, in the United States, who you would think is going to a university to be open to studying and to knowing the facts, would not be just grabbing onto narratives. You first have to work with the facts. Then you try to understand what those facts mean to you. And of course, there's going to be a diversity of opinion. It's not so easy how to decide and understand what should happen in Israel today. Should there be a Palestinian state? Should there not be? How much should Israel give in concessions? These are all legitimate questions, but the facts are not really open to discussion. They should not be. And we're at a point today where the internet is spreading lies rather than spreading the truth. And we have to be out there, hopefully, trying to spread the truth as much as possible. And if we're unified in doing that, hopefully we will be successful. And hopefully we will bring the ultimate redemption where the world will be full of knowledge and find that the one true God, Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad, a God who is one and his name is one, rules the world. And that idea of believing in one God and monotheism is more than just that there's one God. It's that there's all ideas are come from the same root. No matter where you live on the earth, you all have access to the same knowledge. You should have access to the same knowledge. And you should come to understandings which are consistent with your brothers and sisters and other nations. And therefore, hopefully, Mirz Hashem, God willing, we could all live in peace very soon. Good Shabbos.